I'm Dirty Dan and welcome back to Greasy Boy Customs. Today we're going to start doing some work on the Bronco. We're going to go ahead and start the disassembly and removal of the panels that we know are coming off. We're going to start by removing these front sheet metal panels, and then we're going to work on to the driver's side with the A-pillar and the rocker, and we're also going to cut off those old nasty looking fender flares in the back. As you can see, these flares have just been riveted in. I went ahead and started drilling the rivets out. We're going to drill them out all the way down, and then we're going to see what it looks like under here. Hopefully, it looks good. We don't have to do anything. Metal itself, not rotted or rusted out, which is great. But you can see back here a little bit, it's been beat up pretty good. Now we can hammer and straighten that out. But the other problem is if we don't want to run the brush guards, if we want to eliminate them, we're going to have to do something to clean this up because that looks a little silly. This is the driver's side fender. Now you can see that someone has molded a flare in here, but this flare is molded way up in here, like up to here. So we do have new quarters for the rear, and we'll take a closer look and I'll show you some of the differences. So on the factory one, you can see you've got this lip all the way around. Nothing crazy going on, no flare. You can see on this one, no lip, and they've added about, I don't know, maybe 2 inches to the outside of it to flare it out. The left and right side did not match. And as you saw previously on the passenger side, with it not matching at all, we're gonna have to do both quarters. So that's what we're gonna do. Luckily, they split right here at the body seam, and because the top is in such good shape, we shouldn't have to get into that, which is a great thing. One other thing that you'll notice right away is there's no gas door cutouts on these. Well, that's for a reason. This one showed up with 3 gas doors on it. We're not going to do that. We're going to use one fuel tank, or we may have an alternate method, not locked in yet. But either way, there's no need to have gas hole doors in here because we don't know exactly where it's going to be or how we're going to do it or what setup we're going to go with. So something easy we can go back and do later. With the front end, we're replacing the outer panels, the inner fenders, the core support for the radiator, all of this. So we need to remove it. But because we don't want to destroy anything that we may be reusing, we're going to try to remove it as easily as possible. Luckily, we already have the new panels the customers provided, so we know where everything goes. You need to drill out the spot welds. If you're having trouble locating the spot welds, just simply take your grinder and lightly grind over the surface, and you'll see, like right there, that's a low spot, that's your spot weld, and they'll expose themselves. You can see we've already drilled out some of these other ones. As you can see, we have delicately removed the front sheet metal all as one assembly, giving us a lot more room up here. So let's show you this corner right here, and I'll show you how this thing really sits on there and some of the problems it presents. So as you can see here, we've got 1 piece of sheet metal, 2 pieces of sheet metal, and that trim that we just took off actually went inside here. It's sandwiched 3 layers. We had to drill the holes super huge just to get them cut loose, but we'll take care of all that when we go back to welding it. A lot of rust and corrosion on here. We may have to actually end up replacing this sheet metal as well, because even if we clean it up, it's still gonna be all nasty and pitted, and if you don't seal it up right, you run the risk of causing problems further down the road. It is always a smart idea to keep the parts you removed until the job is done. You never know, maybe the new panel's not exactly the same, or you need to reference it and you didn't take a picture of it. It's always a good idea to keep that stuff. Don't throw out the garbage from the job until the job is done. Now we'll jump back over to the rear quarters a little bit later. I just wanted to get that one fender flare off and make sure that the panels are going to line up right. Now we're going to be working on the cowl. Now we don't want to take too many important body panels off at once because you may affect the structural integrity of the cab, especially because we don't have doors on it right now. So one thing to do if you're worried about it is weld some bracing in there. Conduit or some 3/4 or 1 inch steel. I like conduit because in the words of Rick Davis, you can do it with conduit and it's way cheaper and it works. Oh well. Again, luckily we have the new panel, so we know where all the seams are going to be, and we can go in here and take care of finding these spot welds and getting them drilled out and getting this panel off of here. Pro tip, when trying to remove this nasty undercoating, just take a really cheap or really expensive pry bar and heat it up with a torch. Get a little warm and you'll be able to melt through there like butter. Look at that. It just comes right off. Never short on surprises. As you can see here, we peeled back that silicone and drilled it out a little bit, and it's just full of rust in there. And, you know, this is all beat up and it's all rotted out in here as well. This is the reason that when I'm quoting these kind of jobs with sheet metal repair, especially something that looks like it's had several different people have their hands on it fixing things, you always have to leave a buffer and let your customer know that shit's going to happen. Because it does. It always does, and it always will. No doubt. All right, here's the new passenger side door. You see this is brand spanking new. Man, this thing is super clean, and look, the fit to this is really not too bad at all. I didn't modify or move any of this. These are even the used hinges just now. We wanted to make sure that everything was lining up, and before we moved over to this side and started making repairs over there. Also, a very important thing to remember, before you weld anything in solid or put it together permanently, make sure it fits. It's kind of like Walmart furniture. You put it together, you leave everything a little bit loose, tweak everything, make sure it fits before you do the full send and get her locked in. Save you a lot of trouble in the future. We're going to finish up that cowl piece a little bit later. The next thing we're going to be doing after that is taking care of these damaged areas on the driver's side where it was struck. We're going to get all of this replaced, tied in, lined up, get the door fitted and everything tacked in place before we take this body off. This way it's solid and sound and it's not going to move anywhere. The reason we're taking the body off is because we're going to be coating the bottom side of this body after we finish all the sheet metal work. And also we need to get the frame cleaned up and get the motor mounts and transmission mounts and everything set and in place before we clean the frame up and seal the frame. Now, you're asking yourself, well, Dan, what engine and transmission are you putting in it? Well, that's pretty cool, actually. The customer found a 2020 F-150 engine, transmission, and transfer case combination, complete with the wiring and electronics, that's going to be transplanted into here. I've seen these swaps done before. They look like a really cool setup and, you know, add a little bit of modern to the nostalgic look of the Bronco, and it's still going to be a mean machine on the street. Pretty cool swap. There is going to be some modification required with the suspension and the body as expected. That combination is much larger than what was in here originally, so we're going to have to make room to make it all fit. Also, customer dropped off some fenders the other day. They discussed the fender openings and what they wanted to see back here. This is not factory. This is a fiberglass setup. The other side was a factory one that was cut out with a riveted on flare. So the factory one followed the body line down at the bottom, more shallow opening, didn't match the front. So now with these fenders, we're actually going to have a pretty similar opening to this, but not with this drastic flare, and it's going to match the wheel arch openings a lot closer with the front and give it a very nice look, especially with the wheel and tire combinations and the lift that's going to be installed on this truck as well. Stay tuned for future videos. We're going to be doing some cool things. Like I said, all these repairs, pulling the body off, fitting the engine and transmission, and it should be a really fun build. If you've had one of these in the past, let me know what you did to it. Also, what did you love or hate about it, or what would you have done different? Thanks for joining me. Until next time, happy hot rodding.